Good morning, everybody. I'm Nicola Barrett, Chief Corporate Learning Officer at Emory Executive Education at Goizueta Business School. And it's wonderful to have this business over breakfast this morning, particularly as my team and I just did the Navigating Change for Growth program. So we're all sort of excited about growth and change, because there are very few organizations who aren't involved in large change initiatives. And that means everyone working in those organizations really must embrace new ways of operating and leading. And so I'm excited to have a conversation about leading transformation with Goizueta Professor Omar Rodriguez Vila and Marc Mathieu, who most recently was the Senior Vice President of Strategic Customer Transformation and Innovation at Salesforce. Prior to this role, Marc held senior leadership roles at some of the most important consumer and technology companies in the world, including the Chief Marketing Officer of Samsung Electronics America and Senior Vice President of Global Brand Marketing at Coca-Cola. He's been the architect of highly successful enterprise-wide transformations, accumulating invaluable experience and understanding of what it takes to prepare large, complex organizations for the future. In fact, in 2018, he was recognized as one of Forbes, in fact, I think number 10 of the Forbes 50 most influential CMOs in the world. He was born and raised in France. He considers himself to be a global nomad, as he's always on the move and has lived around the globe. He splits his time between London, Los Angeles, and New York, where he is currently. Facilitating the conversation with Marc is Omar Rodriguez Vila, professor in the practice of marketing here at Goizueta Business School. And following a successful career in global marketing, leading global marketing teams at Coca-Cola, Omar shifted to academia, and I'm really pleased that he did so. He's passionate about purpose-driven work, customer experience, growth leadership, and social impact. Omar is the driving force behind our approach to building growth leaders and our new growth leadership assessment tool. He also serves as the academic director of Goizueta Business School's Institute for Business and Society, and has a book to be published next year called Good Growth, How Brands Win with Social Impact. And that is co-authored with Sundar Bharadwaj. Before I hand things over to Omar and Marc, I do want to highlight a couple of short courses we're running in early December for those of you interested in honing your approach to two critical skills in any transformation. The first is negotiation strategies. How do you negotiate for success? And this course really helps you assess your existing negotiation style and then develop new approaches to help you better influence, be more persuasive, and transform conflict into collaboration. The other one is executive decision-making, where you'll explore the underlying psychological, physiological, and sociological dynamics of making decisions, consider issues from multiple perspectives, understand bias, and learn to balance objective and subjective information to make more effective decisions. So two critical skills for any transformation. As with all the webinars, Marc and Omar are going to spend about 35 minutes sharing experiences and insights, and then follow that up with Q&A. So please put your questions in the chat or in the Q&A box, and I know Omar will get to as many of those as possible. So wonderful to have you both on this morning, and over to you, Omar and Marc.
Thank you so much, Nicola. Good morning, everyone. Before I pass it on to Marc, I want to say a few things. First of all, thank you, Marc. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your time and for what you're going to take us through. Guys, think about the times when you have been in an event or an audience, and at the end of the event or the remarks, you experience a standing ovation. People actually got up, and eventually everybody in the room were just standing up, cheering, and some people even crying. I think we have all experienced that in our lives in different settings, but I only experienced that once in my 35-year careers in a work setting. And that one time I experienced that was a time when Marc Mathieu was presenting a strategy for how to revive the brand Coca-Cola icon. It was a meeting with over 300 people, and everybody ended up standing up, some of them even crying and cheering how excited they were about the transformation he was inviting us to participate on. And that is who Marc Mathieu is. So some people walk through uncertainty looking for guidance, and some people embark through it almost with an intuitive sense, as if they have been done it before. And Marc is a leader that has a unique ability to craft the right set of direction and tools and vision to guide transformation in ways that I have not seen others do. And that's why I'm so excited to have Marc share with you some of his learnings about what it takes to lead transformations today, given that it's such an important topic for so many of us. So Marc, with that, here's what we're going to do, guys. Marc is going to take you through some of his learnings. Then I'm going to come back in. I'm going to ask him a few questions, and then we're going to open it up, okay, for you guys to jump in. So with that, Marc, I'll pass it on to you. Thank you again for being here with us.
Okay, well, that was a big introduction, Omar. So I really appreciate you inviting me, you and Emory, for this conversation today. And let's keep it indeed as conversational as possible. So I'm going to try to go quickly through some of the learnings I've had, and then we can do a little bit of Q&A, Omar. So indeed, I've spent my career across, mostly 5 large corporations, all the way from consumer goods with Danone and Coca-Cola and Unilever to hardware tech and software tech with Salesforce and Samsung. And always in roles where, I guess, I've learned that about myself. Even if it was not my mission at the beginning, I ended up leading, driving transformations. I think there's something you learn, I guess, with time, I could say with age, which is the fact that somehow, there are things about you that you can't help. If you see something, you just can't look at it and say, I'm going to satisfy myself with the status quo. And I always try to create transformation that, as someone told me one day, Marc, not every project needs to be epic. And for me, creating epic transformations was what the game was all about. And so I want to share with you a few of the learnings I have had along those transformation journeys. And then, again, feel free to ask me all the questions you want, Omar. The first one, you were referring just now about this presentation we did, which I didn't give one time. I probably gave it 50 times, if not 100, all over the world. And it was not just me. A lot of other people contributed to giving that presentation. But indeed, from the moment where I accepted the role to go and lead global trademark Coca-Cola in Atlanta, we started to craft what initially was called on a small Word document, of a 2-page document, 10 points for the initial thoughts for the revival of an icon. And those were 10 points. But from the get-go, we knew, a small group of us, that we need to, first of all, revive the brand that had been flat for at least 6 or 7 years. The whole trademark, including Diet Coke. There was no Coke Zero. Revival. So revival, an icon. I mean, telling everybody this is an icon. It's not just any other brand. We need to fix the main icon of the company. And then a manifesto, which is, it's going to be a little bit dirty. It's going to be a little bit rebellious. We are not going to make it the traditional way and kind of like join or, don't join, but don't get in the way. And indeed, what you see here is actually a numbered book. We created 300 copies of it. And by the time, the evening when, Omar, you talked about this first presentation we gave it, this was actually a book that flipped literally on the screen at a time where there was no AI, there was no visual effect. And but what was amazing, people went to their bed at night and they all had a personal copy on their bed of that, manifesto with all the vision, the strategy, and the tactics that we had planned as a small group of, of people, of, maybe a dozen, 2 dozen people to basically create that vision. So I say see it, tell it, live it, because I really think that it's very important to initially, when you start a transformation, to have a vision for what you're trying to accomplish. And then to work with a small group of people, a bit like a movie director. When a movie director starts a movie, he doesn't see the whole movie, but he sees enough of it to show it to a small group of people so that together they can actually, make it happen, make it real, and tell the story. And I also feel that a lot of what we were doing, not just me, but the whole team, was living this revival, living this transformation, not just managing it. One thing that I've learned as well, and again, that's probably about myself, but I really feel very often in businesses, we think we're in business of business. We're not in the business of people. People as customers, people as employees. Very often we don't dare to think about people at the core of our transformations. And I've always done that. It was easy in consumer companies because, Coca-Cola was all about, its consumers, etc. But when I went to Samsung, so in a technology world, it was really hard because, putting people at the heart of your strategy means doing what's right for them. This is a presentation I did in New York with Ariana Huffington. We had partnered with her to create an app, the Thrive app, to help people a little bit before screen time to use their phone less. I had been to the TED conference and I had heard that half a dozen of the presentations were talking about phone addiction. And I came back and I told my CEO and my CFO, I need a small budget to help people use their phones less. That conversation didn't go down well, but it was doing the right thing for the people. And so that's the second learning is, again, have a vision. At the heart of the vision, put the people. And then where do you look for inspiration in that vision? Look in your DNA. I've always, at Coca-Cola, I was known for having spent, a lot of time in the archives. I knew the archivist. When I went to Unilever, even the CEO said, in 3 months, I had spent more time in Port Sunlight, which was the origin of the company, than any of the members the lifers that had been in the company the entire life in the executive team. And I told the story of the founder, William Lever. I actually slept in his manor, the manor that he had in over there. And I really impregnated myself with that DNA, with that story of why he did, And at the same time, I believe that this is a place where you need to find inspiration, but you also need to be a little bit disrespectful from that inspiration and take that inspiration, but also, disrespect the past if you want to pay proper respect to the future. And I've always tried to navigate that. And we did this at Coke. Again, when we said manifesto, a lot of people said, the brand is not dead. Revival, the brand is not dead. But the reality, it was dying. It needed a shake-up. And calling it loud and putting a little bit of disrespect to the predecessors that had somehow let it get to that point was necessary. Another learning, I think very often, and I've worked for a lot of companies that somehow I tend to call are part of the 3% club. 3% means you want to deliver 3% of growth at any cost. And because you ambition not less than 3%, you never do more than 3% because you manage, your risk in order to limit it. And when we started this, the second chart, actually, when we presented the manifesto that Omar was referring to, was, we want to double the value of the Coke trademark in less than 10 years. And that was very bold at that time because it had been flat for, down for 7 years. So doubling its value was pretty bold. And at the same time, it was not anchored in a strategy. It was not anchored in a business model. The next slide was our belief it can be done. And so we anchored that bold vision in a belief. And I think that sometimes it's okay, not to have a bunch of Excel spreadsheet that says that you cannot achieve, the goals that you ambition, or that say you can, but you know that the numbers are wrong, you know that you've made them up. At the end of the day, I really believe, again, like a movie director, when he starts the movie, he doesn't know that he can do it, and he doesn't know that it's going to be a blockbuster. But if he doesn't believe it, then it's not going to happen for sure. And so this idea of being bold, but then if you want to be bold, you're not going to be able to go the traditional way. And I use this idea of going rogue with the team that you put in place, with the strategies that you assemble, the tactics, because unless you do things differently from your predecessors, unless you hire people, I always say, who have incredible strengths, therefore incredible weaknesses, because you can't have only strengths. So if you hire for strengths, if you assemble a team for strengths, by definition, you assume that each of them is going to come with a set of weaknesses, but they work as a team to actually compensate each other's weaknesses. And I always say my criteria for assembling the team was always people who are very good at what they do, but also people who have, a passion in their heart, a belief they can change the world, a great team attitude and collaboration spirit, a sparkle in the eye. All of these were actually part of the criteria of the team we assembled. And honestly, the team but the team felt it was invincible. And I don't think that you have, I love, those bold adventures like the Guardians of the Galaxy, but the reality, you never think it's going to end bad, right? It's going to end well. Well, I think that when you start a transformation, you need to also believe that you have the right team. And then you need to course correct along the way. There will be, bad moments. There will be difficult moments. But if you have the right vision, if you have the right strategy, if you have the right tactics, if you have the right teams, and if you know what you're trying to accomplish, then I really believe that you can course correct along the way. One of the models I learned actually back 20 years ago when I was at Coca-Cola from Peter Senge, he had what they called a breakthrough model, and which was a very simple model where you need to anchor your vision, your destination into a current reality. It's kind of like a rubber band, and say, this is where I am, this is where I want to go. And you need to not stretch the rubber band too far out, because otherwise it's going to break. But you need to hold it stronger than your current reality. Otherwise, the team, your strategy, your tactics will always come back to the past. So you need to have this be the strongest point, and then you need to create intermediary steps so that you get closer. And if you get a little bit off track, then because your vision is so strong, you will actually end up going back there, but it won't be a straight line for sure. One thing I've often discussed with Omar, and it's a strong belief I have, is the fact that not just marketing or business, but the entire society for the last at least 300 years have actually prioritized left brain to right brain. All the decisions we make, in business, but also in life, are, rational driven. It's all about how we apprehend the world, not how we comprehend it. It's about how we, at the end of the day, think. And it's not just about creative. It's really the fact that, if you're a bird, if you only eat every grain that you see, which is what we're doing as a society, then you don't look at if there is poisonous grain. You don't look at if there are predators, and you get killed. And I really believe that it's really critical to make space for the right brain, for the creative side of an organization. I always said, you know, a corporation should have a headquarter with at the top of the tower, two sides of the business, one at the left and one at the right, and then the board table should be in the middle. But and again, it's not just the right brain, it's the whole brain. When we did this manifesto at Coke, we also had what we call a manifesto for growth, which was a business strategy to actually roll out the strategy and the tactics, you know, across the organization, so that there would be actually, again, this whole brain. And we have a whole brain for a reason. And as a society, we have segregated the left from the right, and we rarely, you know, bring them together and recognize that they simultaneously always have to be in full symphony. One thing which was probably a feedback which I've learned from Coke and which I tried to apply afterwards is when we started the project at Coke, we were heavy on vision. And we had started the tactics, but again, we had just started. We had worked for a few months with a small team. And so one of the things that's really important is to create quick win. I remember we had, you know, we had all the strategies at a sub number of tactics, and some of the tactics were, you know, this year, next year, 3 to 5 years. And it's really important to recognize the fact that strategy without tactics basically, you know, will not make success, and vice versa is true too. So this importance of not, I always say strategy is about choice, but, you know, tactics is how you make those choices real, and how you deliver the results. And it's very difficult to navigate simultaneously at vision, strategy, and tactics. And I think it's really important to do that. And the other thing, and this is the most mundane part of it, but it's making sure that you also, you know, don't create an organized chaos. Having some kind of method to the madness. There was somebody in the team, I remember Karen, who always said, you know, there's got to be a method to the madness. And for instance, at Unilever, this is something from Unilever, when we did the global marketing revamp of all the big brands, we created the equivalent of a RACI. I personally I'm not a big fan of RACI. So we branded it Do It, which was action-oriented, which was all about who decides, who owns, who inputs, and who gets out of the way, trusts. And trust that the other guys are going to do the job that they're supposed to do. And again, making sure that if you're going to lead a transformation, you're going to put the method so that there is an organized chaos. Also because there is an organization that works. Otherwise, if you always are in chaos, you know, some people just can't live in chaos. I do personally, you know, believe that chaotic organizations can work, but it can't be pure chaos. It needs to be organized at the same time. And then maybe the last point of the learning, when I look back, and again, we had conversations with Omar about that. When I look back, and Omar was very generous when he said, yeah, Marc, you know, presented, Marc did this presentation, you know, Marc is the spokesperson. The transformation wouldn't have happened if we had not been a whole team. And I actually remember when I went, you know, sometimes to global meetings here and there, people said, you know, oh, people were so excited. And people say, oh yeah, they're part of Marc's team. They were not part of Marc's team. They were just part of the manifesto team. And they had all taken a role to play, a personal role to play, to bring the mission to life. And I think that this idea, and this, by the way, was the last page of that manifesto. You know, it's basically taken from Whitman, you know, what will your verse be? How will you contribute your verse? And then at the end of the book you saw at the beginning, there were white pages. And I really think that very often we lead transformations by thinking that we can tell everybody what they need to do. And the reality, you know, Steve Jobs used to say, why do I hire very talented people if it's to tell them exactly what they have to do? He kind of did. But the reality, you need to empower people to bring their gift to the table. because if you don't let them take ownership, then, you're on your own and you don't, have this multiplier effect that is exponential when you have an entire team that's rallied behind a vision, a project, a transformation. And this is the thing, I've been lucky to see these transformation efforts and these teams assembled several times in my career, sometimes in, let's call it, positive context, like reviving the Coke icon. It was okay. The brand was still, very big. You had 1 billion people drinking it every day. It was okay. But I also have led transformations in times of crisis, when Coke had its biggest recall in the history in Belgium, or when Samsung had its exploding phones back a few years ago. And basically everybody, we got a free advertising campaign because all the airlines said, if you have a Samsung phone, don't board the plane. That's not the campaign you want. So again, I've been lucky to lead all those transformations, and I'm now starting to participate with several startups in another transformation, which I think is probably going to be the biggest transformation of our lifetime, which is the AI and robotic and all of this, revolution that we've started to really not just enter because it started many years ago, but to see penetrate our life and our work since the last few years, and it's only the very beginning. We're probably, if you look at flying, analogy, we're probably at the time of the Wright brothers. We figured out that there might be a way to get a piece of equipment to fly in the air, but we have no idea that the entire world is going to travel nonstop, all over the world, and how travel has changed society. And I think this is the moment we are. We need to embrace that transformation. You all have a role to play. And so, having said that, happy to take any question, Omar, and go anywhere you want me to go.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Marc. Super exciting work and stories and experiences. I'm going to ask you a few questions, and then I'm going to open it up and share with you questions from the audience. But let me start. You talked about, in order to lead a successful transformation, it seems like part of the beginning is crafting a vision, having clarity about what you're transforming into, right? And that seemed to have been core in all of your transformation efforts. What have you found helps in order to identify what that vision is? Like, there is a moment in time when you need to transform, but you still don't know that vision, right? And I'm trying to figure out how have you discovered what the visions needed to be, and what has helped you in that phase?
I think I have it's so important for me that I dig, and I end up finding. But I often, not everybody has that. And I often, even myself, find help in designers, in thinkers, in almost philosophers, trying to understand, what is a human tension, and not a business problem. But I always try to find, how do we bring it out of this is the business problem, and how do I frame it and say it in a way that resonates with human beings? That's why I said before, it's all about the people. I think that, and transformation, I always say marketing starts within, but using storytelling internally to rally people is incredibly powerful. But most of the time, we don't do that. I often, again, back to the director analogy, if you take a piece of research, or a vision and a strategy, of how, for instance, technology is going to change the way we live. If you are a business person, you're going to create a PowerPoint. If you are a movie director, you're going to create Minority Report. Now, Minority Report shows the picture of the future much better than any PowerPoint. And I think that having that kind of mindset of, I'm not going to do just another PowerPoint, but I'm going to try to create the condition to tell a story that I can rally people behind is the name of the game.
But Mark, I love that. But I suspect at some point in these transformations, you were having a meeting with people that had to sign the check required to make it happen. Did they ask you, but Mark, what's the business case? What are we going to get in return? Like, how did you handle those types of questions early on in the transformation when the idea still needed to be protected so it could grow?
It's a good question, and I think if you are going to lead a transformation, you need to have a transformation mandate, and you also need to accept the fact that you're taking a risk. You're taking a risk because, again, not only because it may not work, but also because a lot of people will not be believers, or they will be skeptics, or they will be jealous, or they will be, but the reality, the likelihood of getting in trouble, and I'm talking out of experience, is very high. And I've always used this principle of saying, I'd rather be fired for what I did than for what I didn't do. And I think that's an attitude. And I think as a team, I remember the very first meeting, I don't know if you were there, Omar, we had at Coke on this revival. We were in a Michelin star restaurant where we had booked a room to be able to do a brainstorm. And I received a message saying that I was breaking policy, that we were not supposed to do offsite meeting to do internal brainstorming. And I created a folder saying, breaking policies, and I put that email into that, because I knew if you are going to rally people, if you're going to transform, you also need to create the conditions, for the team to believe that, you're going to give yourself the means to transform. So the fiducial question is you're right. You need to have the trust. You need to have a leader that trusts you, that gives you the mandate. And again, when I went at Coke, when I went at Unilever, it was the case. And it's easier to do it with a budget. I mean, but again, what I did with, Tech and Humanity, the whole at Samsung was absolutely very cheap, but it was something I deeply believed in, that the need to make sure that we did not only sell more phones, but we did what was right for people to use their phone, in the right way.
Now, you spoke about the criteria you use in assembling the team, in selecting the talent, right? And I definitely I feel when I look back at the types of teams that you formed, that it was a coalition of people of all kinds of skills, right? Now, separate from assembling the team is nurturing that team to perform at their best. What have you found to work or to be important when you have a team of highly skilled people, but that they all have very different skills? What have you found that it's important to enable them to perform at their best?
Yeah, I think it takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of personal time to nurture the team. And sometimes what you need to realize, I think one day a business coach told me, Mark, you know why people, you're always busy and people always want your time. And he said, you know what they're looking for? I said, they are looking for, my input, my feedback. But he said, no, they're looking for your energy. And I think that was very deep, because in reality, what that was is indeed, I had that, when I said live it, I was living that revival. And when people came to me, it was to get a little bit of that energy dose that kept them individually and collectively going. And I feel if you embark on a transformation, you need to be ready to give that energy along the way. Because otherwise it's going to die down, because people will have moments of doubts. They will have moments of difficulties. And then the other thing is creating, you will have team conflicts. You will have, so creating the oil that brings the team together, that celebrates the individuals and the collective, I think is really important, and it's challenging. I mean, we all, either as parents or as children, we all have, families. Families are not always, easy. I think when you manage a transformation, you build not just a team, you build another kind of family, a chosen one that chooses to rally behind a mission together, and you need to be prepared to the challenges that will come along the way.
I mean, it's almost like I'm hearing you say you need to commit yourself not only to the transformation or the business objectives, you need to commit yourself to the team, to the people that you have assembled to do this work. And
There is also one thing, which is when you assemble the team, another thing which I didn't share, which I always, like that one day, one of the person who worked on my team told me, Mark, there are 4 categories of people. You have, the people who, work hard and are very good. And those, they are your stars. You need to cherish them. Then you have people who are very good and they don't work much. So you need to encourage them to work more, because they're unleveraged and they could, deliver. Then you have people who are not very good and don't work much. That's okay. You'll always have 15%, 20% of deadwood. The worst is the people who are not good and work a lot. And I think when you assemble a team, being aware that if you have people like that, it's better to let them go early. And I know it sounds rude, but it's better to have a frank conversation saying, I don't believe you can do the job, or you're not buying into the vision. Because what you don't want is to have people who are going to be like the grit in the oyster, inside the transformation team. And you need to make sure that you have a team that really, collectively buys into it, which otherwise a few people, I was just talking about an experience. I went to a very dramatic play last night in New York, and there were 2 or 3 audience members who kept laughing and clapping. It killed the whole experience of everyone. It was one of the most dramatic and sad acting and play, etc., and deep, and it killed the experience for everyone. So don't have people inside your team that behave like that.
Yeah, it's good. All right, Mark, I'm going to go to the chat. We have a lot of questions. I'm going to kind of narrow it down. I'm going to start with a question by Kevin Phillip. He's asking, what has been your biggest transformation, the biggest transformation in your career, and why? What made it so?
I do think that the biggest one in terms of business was probably the Coke one. And I really feel that it was one where, to the point you were asking about the means to do it well, we had the resources. We had a fantastic material. The Coke brand doesn't get better than that. I think we developed the right vision and strategy. We had the right team. We had the right budget, and we had the duration to make it happen. I remember I'd left by then, and several other people had left, but 9 years after we had started the manifesto, Coke's share price hit double. And the famous double we had put as the business goal, of the revival. And I received a bunch of messages from several members of the team saying, we did it. Although a lot of them had left, I had left, but there was still this belief that we had set ourselves on a mission and we had accomplished the mission.
That's wonderful. I'm going to combine two questions, one from Marietta Morton and another one from Tammy Cobb, because they kind of speak into the same thing. You talk about the team members actually were coming to you not for your input, but for your energy, which puts a lot of pressure on you to keep that energy, to renew that energy. You know, transformations are tiring, they're exhausting. So what things did you find help you at conserving your energy, at finding the right balance so that you could stay motivated for the long run, even when things got tough?
Yeah, I remember one day, again, the same coach told me, Mark, do you realize that, when you're asked to go from here to there, most people say, okay, let's go. What's the straight line? And you say, okay, let's all huddle. I know a little pub, by the lake. Let's go there. Let's, have a lunch and discuss how we're going to get there. And then you go and then you start, and then suddenly, oh, there is this, this little, mountain, and you go and visit it. And suddenly you look at the clock and you say, oh, now we need to go. And then the mountain is in front of you and say, never mind, we're going to climb the mountain. And everybody starts to climb the mountain, etc. And then finally you arrive, and the other teams probably also arrive. You don't have the same sense, or they don't have the same sense of accomplishment than you do. And you've accomplished much more. And then he said, and what you do then? He said, well, you say, where are we going next? And most people are exhausted. So I do think that indeed recognizing that not everybody is going to have the same level of energy, the same pace is important. Personally, I've always fed that energy with my own curiosity. And I find that always having new ideas, new things that motivate you. I mentioned before, when I went to this TED conference and I came back, with recognizing that six, presentations at that time were talking about phone addiction. That created a new energy for me. And that enabled me to come back with a team and create something which, to be fair, was surprising to people, but at the same time was energizing because it gave them a sense of purpose. And I feel that, again, the energy, also comes from the fact that you create for yourself and for others a sense of mission that is bigger, honestly, than what you're trying to do. What we were trying to do was, if you put it bluntly, was to sell more Coke. If you had asked people how they felt, they thought they were solving world peace. And creating that tension in terms of energy, of not anchoring, the vision, the strategy, everything on the business goal, but also on something that's greater, that makes people, get out of bed in the morning. And I really believe that most people don't get out of bed just for the share price, unless they have a lot of shares.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, people to get out of bed, but also for you to get out of bed in the morning as a leader, right? Like for you to be motivated, I suspect you need something bigger than that. Now, I kind of resonate with what you're saying. I always felt that meetings in business oftentimes feel like a room of mirrors, right? Where you're looking at yourself, you're looking at your results internally. And meetings with you were was like a room with windows, because you always brought topics from the external world, from art, from music, and you made them relevant to the context of what we were trying to address. And that kind of helped get the team going, which is what I wanted to get to. It's one of the questions in the chat. Transformations are long. They're marathons. They're not sprints. And the team can get really excited at the beginning, the first mile, we're all there. But, by mile 10, people start dropping. So what have you found is helpful in keeping that team going so that they can get to the end of the transformation, or at least carry enough of the journey?
Yeah, I think it's a very good question, and I'm not sure I have a very clear answer to that other than, to your point, feeding the energy of the transformation of the team. I do think I used that breakthrough model before, and I said, in the end, you go from here, you go from there. I think that reassessing current reality constantly, so that you keep that tension between, yes, we may have accomplished this, but this is where we still need to go. So constantly being able to show again that tension, keep that creative tension between where you are, even if you've progressed. The most difficult thing is there is what you're talking about, people get tired. There is also sometimes people stop to believe. Because as I said, you hit a rock and something doesn't go as planned, and you start, and this is where, again, rightly or wrongly, I always have felt that marketing can save the day. Stories are critical, because if people lose the vision, the passion, if they lose the belief, then the team starts to disassemble, as you say, the projects, etc. So finding that right tension, to me, is critical. But there is no secret formula, because you need to be prepared almost for that, and be prepared to jump in when it happens.
Good. I'm gonna switch gears a little bit and talk about another important topic in transformations. And you alluded to this earlier, that has to do with empowerment, right? So David Schurer is asking about that, and I think it's really important. As a leader, at times you have clarity about where you want to go, and then you hire these very talented people to help get there. What is your approach at ensuring that in your interactions with the team, you're really empowering them and giving them enough freedom for them to do their work, instead of imposing kind of your own ways of thinking or doing on them?
I think what's important is not to hire people for what they do, but for what they can do or could do. And I really think that it's important to help people see how they could do something bigger than they could even imagine for themselves. So it's almost like, we all know world records keep constantly being beaten, because somebody starts to believe, that they can beat, the previous record or their own record. And I think that helping people believe that you basically, you could do this, but you could do more. And this constant, giving inputs, giving feedback, but also letting people do things, including mistakes. And I've always tried to be, empowering enough, but close enough and ready to jump in when, the shit hits the fan, sorry. And also not to blame people, but really to try to be present, to say, okay, there is a problem, how do we solve it? And I think that this is really, if you help people navigate that their own personal growth, conviction in a role, the fact that they feel that they are doing more than they initially thought they could, I think that creates very, very engaged team and very loyal teams.
Awesome. Marc, over time, I mean, you have led large, complex organizations in different companies, and you have repeatedly been able to help them transform to a better state. Along the way, these transformations can be challenging, can be, frankly, scary at times. Did you ever feel fear? What did you fear the most when you were going through this transformation, and how did you manage that kind of personal emotion from getting on the way of what you were trying to do?
That's a very good question. I was asked a similar question recently in a conference, and I said I had no fear, and people laughed because you had a group of people. It was in a corporation who probably were all fearful in a way. And when you say to people, no, I had no fear. I was leading a very bold, very scary indeed, and very almost unlikely transformation. But at no moment in time did I have any doubt. And to me, this is something really interesting because I really believe that when you, especially in the business world, when you start a transformation, there is no way you can know exactly how you're going to do it. Maybe I've been impressed, for instance, the current CEO of Microsoft, Satya. When I saw him present, he was 3 weeks into the job, and he presented a vision for Microsoft, and I thought, oh, he's on a roll, and he had it right, and he's been rolling that. But most people don't know how they're going to do it. But they, as I said before, they see it enough that they can work with a team to craft it, shape it, course correct it along the way.
Mm-hmm.
And I do feel that it's important to acknowledge the fact that you don't have all the pieces, but that you're going together with the team, you're gonna create it, course correct it, address the challenges. And again, I think that no fear is contagious. If you have no fear and you have a group of people who are ready to embrace no fear, then you create a no fear team. And it doesn't necessarily mean that the team cannot fail, but at least the team knows that if they fail, they will find a way to fix it.
Mm-hmm.
That's also where the strengths and the weaknesses, I've seen many times when one person was failing, others jumping in to help. And not in a way of saying, oh, he's not good, she's not good, we're going to, take it over. No, but really trying to genuinely help and creating that team almost approach and camaraderie is critical.
Mm. Great. I'm going to introduce a slightly different topic that Maurice Royal is asking about, which I think is also really important. You are basically describing transformation as a team sport, right? You need vast amount of people of very different types in order for transformation to work. That means you're going to be responsible for transforming an organization when you're oftentimes don't have the direct authority over the people that are working with you to make that transformation happen. So this leadership without authority seems to be a skill that is essential in being able to lead transformations. And I'm wondering, what have you learned about that art of managing people when they don't report to you?
Yeah, I feel lucky because I don't see structures. And if you limit yourself to structures and you say, I only am going to manage with the teams that report to me, then you're limited in scope. If you think, no, who are the people who basically can play a part, and across the organization, what are the skills, what are the functions that need to be brought together to create the transformation. So I've always created teams that by design were bringing people beyond the core team, beyond the team that reported to me. And I've never made any difference, or I tried not to make, a difference. I know there were people who were, not reporting to me, and they were playing, pillar roles. And I feel that that's, yeah, I think it's difficult for a lot of people because a lot of people say, this is my team. We've learned, over the last 250 years, we've learned to organize, to create, to manage everything in silos. And the org chart structure of corporations is one of the worst organization models. It was not meant to be pyramidal org chart. It was the first org chart was born from a railway company 250 years ago that was just trying to make sure that there was the proper data flow across all the railway employees to make sure that the trains wouldn't crash. But then people have said, okay, so that data flow is my team, that data, and they started to create, you know, a pyramidal org chart. But originally the idea of the first org chart was not an org chart, but a data flow chart. So I really think that making sure that you, I think I.
Okay, great. I have one last question, Mark, and we've been talking about organizational transformation and how do you lead it. But I suspect everybody in the call right now, it's also in their own process of personal transformation. Like we are going through life seeking to improve ourselves, to become a better version of ourselves. And I'm wondering, and I have seen you transform yourselves from one role to another company to do very different things, but there's a common aspect of what you do, and there are new aspects to what you do all the time. And I'm wondering, what have you learned about personal transformation, about continuously pushing yourself to become a better version of what you are?
Yeah, so one thing I've been lucky, I've had, you know, very often business coaches that were, you know, great, great, you know, they would have been great therapists. They were business therapists, not, you know, personal therapists, but they often acted, you know, on both fronts, because I don't really believe in the work-life separation. You know, work-life balance, there is a moment where, you know, you end up, you know, bringing the two together. And so having business coaches has been incredibly helpful. I think that curiosity for me is, I've always been driven, you know, by disruption, by what's next, you know, by, you know, something that, you know, has not happened yet, you know, as, you know, Star Trek said, to boldly go where no one else has gone before. So that's something that drives me. And I feel that finding a way to continue to feed yourself with curiosity so that you keep adding almost new relevance to yourself. I'm leading AI transformations, and I'm doing, you know, advisory around AI. Let's be honest, AI has been around, you know, just, you know, I mean, as a business strategy, it's been around a few years. I'm not an AI expert. I was not an AI expert, but I was a transformation expert, and I saw a new transformation coming, and the name of that transformation was AI. So really starting to ask yourself, what are going to be the next transformations in society? And as you said, making them relevant, not just to your business, but making them relevant to yourself, or making yourself relevant to them is probably critical if you want to continue to be at the forefront. And it's an effort. It's a deliberate effort, because if you do not make it happen for yourself, and it's a very good question probably to end, because I think when you lead transformations for others, it's easy to forget to lead personal transformation. And I think you need to do it at the same time. Otherwise, you will end up obsoleting yourself for the next one.
All right, Mark, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Everybody that joined the call, thank you. Thank you for your questions and your engagement. I'm sorry if I didn't get to all your questions. I try to get to as many as possible, but Mark, this was a true honor to have you here, share your thoughts on transformation. I hope you guys got value from it and you enjoyed it. And I'll pass it back to, I think, Heather or Nicola.
Yes, thank you so much. We really appreciate both Omar and Mark. Thank you so much for sharing your expertise today. We are so grateful for that. And thank you, Nicola, for kicking us off this morning on this Thursday morning. My name is Heather Dufault. I am part of the open enrollment team here at Goizueta Business School, and we certainly appreciate all of you sharing an hour with us this morning. I get to take a few minutes here just at the end to highlight a few of our open enrollment short courses that are coming up, and also talk about our Business Over Breakfast series and what is coming up for the final month of 2024. Can we just pause for a second? It is December in just a minute of 2024. Where has this year gone? So coming up in our Business Over Breakfast series on December 5th, we will be with Eric Holshauser talking about unlocking intelligence and well-being, our holiday edition. And at the moment, we're still finalizing our details for the December 19th. Stay tuned, they will be coming shortly. Also, as Nicola mentioned in the beginning, we have a couple of short courses coming up in open enrollment. The first is Negotiation Strategies for Success. This is ideal for mid and senior level business leaders who want to improve their negotiation and conflict management skills. Also, our executive decision-making course. This is for professionals looking to drive strategic decision-making within their organizations. Participants will explore how decisions are impacted by certainty, volatility, uncertainty, and ambiguity, and they'll develop an action plan for making better decisions. And also, registration is ending soon for our popular Business Over Healthcare for-credit certificate courses. If you're interested in healthcare and you want to learn about the business side of medicine to innovate and impact change, we would love to have you join us. Professionals who have benefited from these courses include physicians, clinicians, healthcare administrators, healthcare insurance professionals, and those in government. Students in this structured, organized program will focus on some of the most pressing healthcare issues, including strategic agility, leading and managing change, cost and quality management, and value-based delivery. Please reach out to the email on the screen if you have any questions or if you're interested in these courses. Information will also be shared in the chat. So again, we thank you so much for sharing your morning with us. We appreciate having you, and we wish you a happy Thursday and a happy Thanksgiving.